Hello, welcome to the YouTube channel D Creations Resources. We are looking at different concepts. Let's look at the concept of standard deviation in the series Tell Me What. So, standard deviation. The word deviation is a word you must have come across. And what does it mean? Basically, how far it is from the normal. So that is the idea of deviation. And then when we talk about standard deviation, it has to be far from certain number. So in a way we can say that standard deviation is kind of a measure of how spread out the numbers are. Of course, there is a formula which we will talk about. And there's another term called variance, and variance is the square of standard deviation. Or in other words, standard deviation is square root of variance. So variance is basically the average of the squared differences from the mean. Let me say it slowly. Average of the squared differences from the mean. So obviously if you want to find out variance, first you will have to find out mean, and mean is the average. And then for every number you will subtract the mean from that number and square the result. I'll also give you an example, so don't worry. And then we work out the average of these squared differences, and whatever number we get, that is the variance. So for example, let's say that there is an exam in which the students have scored the following marks. Let's say the exam is out of 600, and you can note down the marks that I am telling. So there are 5 students. First student got 600 out of 600. Second student got 470. Third student got 170. Fourth student got 430. And fifth student got 300. Did you note the numbers down? 600, 470, 170, 430 and 300. So now we want to find out the variance and hence later the standard deviation. So how will you find out the variance? What is the first step? First step is finding the average of the 5 numbers 600, 470, 170, 430 and 300. So what is the average? For that purpose you will just have to add them up. When you add them up, the total comes out to be 1970. And since there are 5 numbers, in order to take out mean of 5 numbers, you have to divide this total, that is 1970 by 5. So the answer is 394, right? So that is the average. Now, in order to get the variance, you need to find out how far away every number is from 394. So for example, first student got 600. So 600 is 206 away by 206 from 394. Similarly, second student got 470 and that is 76 away, or in other words, basically we are just doing the subtraction. So when it was 600, you just said 600 minus 394. So that gave you 206. Similarly, 470 minus 394, that gives you 76. Now the third student has got 170 marks. So the marks are below the mean or below the average. So here, when you subtract, obviously you are going to get a negative sign. So 170 minus 394, that is minus 224. Fourth student got 430 and that is 36. So 430 minus 394 basically, which is 36. And the last student got 300. So that is minus 94 because it's less than the average. So now you have to square each of these differences, add them up and divide by 5. So 206 square plus 76 square plus minus 224 square plus 36 square plus minus 94 square. Of course, since it's a square, all the negative signs are going to turn into positive. So basically it will be addition of 42436, 5776, 50176, 1296 and 8836. And when you add all of them up, you get a big number, 108520. It's a 6-digit number. And since again the marks were for 5 students, so whatever this addition you've got, you're going to divide by 5. So the answer is 21704. So this is the variance. Now, as mentioned earlier, standard deviation is square root of variance. So standard deviation is under root 21704, and that comes out to be 147. So it's 147.32 and ... But we are just going to approximate it, and the standard deviation is going to be 147. So it means that the numbers are far from the mean by 147. Now, in a normal distribution, when you're talking about standard deviation, you will have 68% of the values in the range sigma plus or minus, so of mean, or in other words, if mean is denoted by mu, then we would say that 68% of the values lie between mu plus or minus sigma. Now there is one important thing that you need to remember. Right now the data we chose was only for 5 students. So here we divided by the total number 5, but that is, so if I denote that as capital N, we divided it by capital N. But if the data is really huge, then we have to divide it by capital N minus 1. So here, as we mentioned, capital N was 5 because the marks were for 5 students. So in the other case, you have to divide it by 4. So then the variance will also change. If you remember, the total was 108520, and if you divide it by 4, it gives you 27,130, and this standard deviation will be square root of that, so that comes out to be 165. So if the number is small, then we say that we call it population standard deviation, and it is given by under root 1 upon n summation I going from 1 to n of xi minus mu whole square, while for a sample which is taken from a huge population, the data is really large, then the standard deviation is given by under root 1 upon n minus 1 into summation I going from 1 to n of xi minus x bar whole square. So here, instead of denoting the mean by mu, we are denoting it by x bar, because here the analysis is also done in a different way. So let me repeat the steps to be taken for calculating standard deviation. First, you have to find out the average. Then for each number, you have to subtract it from mean or the other way, and basically if the number is larger than mean, the difference will be denoted as positive, and if the number is smaller than mean, that is the average, the difference will be denoted as negative. But anyway, you have to square the result, so that doesn't make too much of a difference. And then you have to find the average of these squared differences, so you need to add them all up and again divide by the total number of readings there were, and then you have to take square root of that. So this is called population standard deviation. And if we have the deviation where it is just a sample of the whole population, the data given is just a sample, then in that case we have to find out sample standard deviation. And here, as mentioned earlier, you have to use the mean minus 1, that number, particular number, for the division, and this is called Basel's correction. And here you have to consider the sample mean. So for that also we use x bar. You may ask, why do you need to take a sample? So basically, if the data is large, so right now we just spoke about 5 students, but suppose this exam was given by all the students in the whole country, and you want to know, you want to find out the standard deviation for the marks for all these students, then you just have to take a sample from there. It won't be possible for you to do it for the entire country. So it's a kind of an approximation. So you do lose some accuracy, but the result is not too far from the actual result.